Here's exactly why US history created the best credit system in the world and why you, as a non-US business owner, can actually tap into this powerful financial system. See, while most countries treat credit like a privilege reserved for the wealthy elites, America built something completely different. A system so powerful it turned ordinary citizens into millionaires. A system so accessible that even non-US citizens without an SSN can leverage it for 6 figures in funding. That's why in today's video, I'm going to show you how US history created this credit system. But before we dive in, as a quick disclaimer, of course, this is just a YouTube video, so we've got no income guarantees over here. This does not mean that you'll be able to access your own US credit cards. Of course, I always recommend you to seek qualified professionals for your specific situation, or you can just get in contact with our team. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. So the reason why I'm filming this video actually came from a road trip when I was driving down from Canada to Florida. That was like a really long drive, but pretty much I was going through each individual states, and throughout the states I was actually asking AI what are some common cool facts about each individual state. And as I was going down, I was learning some really interesting historical facts about the United States and how the American Revolution was actually happening. And so most owners, business owners, of course, feel like Americans have an innate advantage, a unfair advantage in the business game. And it makes a lot of sense, because when I tell a lot of people that they can access this system in their specific situation, they almost feel like I'm doing something illegal. But let me just break this down. I'm going to give you a few points on a historical basis on why American credit was created in such a different way than all of the other first world countries. And so the thing is that in the US, consumers have the opportunity to get access to 50 different credit card issuers. While in Canada, for my example, there's only just 5 different major banks that you can really take advantage of. Even in Europe and the Middle East, there's just much less options. And when you actually compare the different sites, such as Amex USA versus Amex UK or Amex Canada, you'll actually see a huge difference. And that is actually due to historical reasons. Along with the fact that people in Europe or the Middle East, they've got to put up a lot of collateral if they wanted to get access to capital or loans. In the United States, that's not really a thing, and I'm going to break that down just in a few seconds. Along with the fact that there are US bankruptcy laws that actually protect risk takers in the capitalistic system in the USA, which allows entrepreneurs that fail to actually get a second chance at business in this system. And an interesting quote states that in America, failure isn't fatal, it's just feedback. And that's really the mindset that built up Silicon Valley, that built up Apple, that built up all of these huge tech companies, because a lot of entrepreneurs are supported by this financial system that allows them a second chance and to take more risk. So the first reason why America is superior is the fact that America was the nation that defended capitalism. They defended competition between businesses, and that's exactly why there are 4,000 different banks that compete to get you access to American credit cards, American banking. And so during World War I, World War II, and even in the Cold War, there was a battle between communism and capitalism, and the side of capitalism was from the United States. They were defending the concept of private companies competing to give better services to their customers, whereas with communism, they believed in the idea of big governments and the government itself providing services to their citizens. On the other side, America itself, the reason why there's so much competition is because they defended capitalism, and now to this current day, there are 4,000 different banks that are actually battling each other to give you access to better credit products. Where you actually look back at the state of other financial systems, you'll notice that there's much less competition between all of the different banks, because there's not that innate level of capitalism to the same degree as in the United States. So I'm personally a Canadian citizen, and I can relate to this because there's only really just 5 big banks in Canada. There's RBC, TD, BMO, CIBC, and just those banks, they don't feel that sense of competition to then give better credit products to their clients because there's just less competition generally. And so that's really one of the foundational historical facts that led America to provide much better credit products to entrepreneurs and whatnot. So personally, for my situation, that's one of the reasons that led me to think that in America, there's a better credit system that will serve me in my specific situation as a business owner. Now, the second reason, which is actually even more interesting, is the fact that in America, American settlers that came from the United Kingdom, a lot of them were actually indebted to monarchs and rich people in the United Kingdom. So while I was actually passing down through Georgia, I actually was having a quick conversation with AI, and I asked them like what was some like cool facts about Georgia while I was driving down. And an interesting thing was that Georgia was looked at as a debt refuge for a lot of prisoners in the United Kingdom that were in prison literally because they were trying to scale businesses, ended up getting into debt. And then as a reason for getting into debt, they ended up going to prison in the United Kingdom for that specific fact. So a lot of American settlers that ended up rebelling against the United Kingdom, one of the foundational reasons why the American rebellion ended up happening was due to the fact that a lot of them were indebted to the United Kingdom and a lot of different monarchs in the United Kingdom. And that's the reason why they're like, we need to create a better credit system. We want to have our own sovereignty and start from the ground up because we believe that this specific credit system in the United Kingdom was not built with that capitalistic foundation. So after the independence of the United States, they ended up rebuilding their own credit system that actually encouraged risk and forgave failures as an entrepreneur. And through that restructuring of the credit system, they ended up creating laws that protect consumers that leverage debt to scale businesses. And in that case, that allows lenders to be more forgivable when they're actually in debt, which ends up leading them not to go to prison and have all of these consequences. And I can personally relate to this because when I was in Dubai, I was a full-time resident in Dubai. I was actually paying 0% taxes, but I realized that I did not have the American financial products that Americans had. And the moment that I learned that contrast was when I was actually looking for credit in Dubai, in the UAE, right? Because I was paying 0% taxes, but I wanted to access business credit for my business, high redemption credit cards, so that I can scale my business even further. Soon enough to realize that if I get into debt in the United Arab Emirates, I would potentially face the risk of going to jail. And that's the last thing that I wanted to have. I wanted to be in a credit system that was more forgivable if I ended up getting into a failure. So a cool quote by a historian named T.H. Breen wrote that America replaced punishment with potential. And that's why you can go broke and still get a new credit card 6 months later because they've recreated that credit system in a way that promotes entrepreneurship. So after the Americans recreated their financial system, then you'd of course assume that some of the other credit systems, the other countries, would actually follow suit and adjust their laws and adjust their forgivableness when it comes to accessing credit products, but that actually did not happen. Unlike in America, most countries ended up sticking with the old laws that the United Kingdom created, because again, keep in mind that the UK was the capital of capital. That was the place where you were able to get access to credit, right? And so based on that, the countries like Canada, Australia, and all of the other European countries ended up keeping that system, did not change the rules, whereas with America, they changed those foundations due to historical reasons. One, from the fact that a lot of American settlers had a lot of debt from the UK. And of course, with such a forgivable system, there was of course the Great Depression, where a lot of people were in a lot of credit card debt in the United States, and lenders ended up getting some hard times. So throughout the Great Depression, they actually created the FDIC, Fannie Mae, and modern credit reporting, which ended up creating a really complex credit reporting system that allowed lenders to actually look at someone's situation and assess the risk before they even give someone credit products. Whereas in other countries, the credit system is less developed on the side of actually figuring out whether someone will actually pay off their debts and whatnot, that they would lend money with collateral where they would be much less incentivized to take risk, unlike a lot of American lenders. And that's one of the reasons why, because America had such high forgivableness, they had to expand their credit system and figure out what kind of details can they gather from clients to figure out whether they're going to actually pay off their debts and whatnot, while maintaining such a forgivable system. So as a result, the US banks actually learned to price risk dramatically, and others just avoided it altogether. That's exactly why American lenders can approve a startup that has zero collateral, while most Europeans were still looking for land titles or collateral to actually give someone access to credit products. Now, moving on to the last and most foundational reason why America has this innate advantage, and it is the fact that they've got the global reserve currency of the world. The US dollar created an unfair advantage to a lot of American banks where they were flexible to take on more risk because in fact 60% of all foreign exchange reserves are actually held in USD, meaning that a lot of American banks had such a strong balance sheet to actually give out loans and give out money to entrepreneurs that wanted to take risk in this American financial system. So when the world trusts your currency, lenders can afford to take more chances and more risks when giving out money. And your own citizens can afford to dream bigger and think of building their own business or think of building their own company. And that's exactly why with a lot of American credit products, you'll get access to 0% interest funding, the highest redemption credit cards, and 6 figures in US funding, even though you don't have collateral by your side, because they've created the credit system in such a complex manner where a lender can actually afford to give you money, one, from the fact that they've got the USD, where that bank will most likely not go bankrupt, and two, for the fact that there are actual laws that support the actual consumer that's actually getting those credit products. So with all of those historical reasons and those financial advantages that the United States has, how does this actually play in for foreigners that want to access this specific credit system? Well, in fact, for your perspective as a non-US citizen, why would America want to extend this specific credit system to foreigners that are not even living in the United States? Well, one interesting fact that actually blew my mind is the fact that every year, $4 trillion worth of investments actually pours into America every single year from foreigners. And so they had to create a framework that allowed foreigners themselves to actually enter into this financial system. And that's exactly why they created the ITIN, a lot of different laws that support foreigners as well, that didn't discriminate based on where you lived or what country you're originally from. And they created the ITIN, they created a lot of different laws that allows you as a non-US citizen to step into the system. There's the SSN for Americans, and there's the ITIN. And they created both of those numbers that actually is the number that you need to give to an issuer when you actually request for a credit product. Both of those numbers are treated the same. The ITIN and the SSN are treated the same because they want to support foreigners to invest into the American economy. They want foreigners to start businesses and leverage a US LLC or any kind of corporation in America because they benefit so much from foreign investment. So now that you know why US history created the most powerful credit system in the world, the real question is, what are you going to do with this information? Because you've really got only two choices. You can keep doing business the hard way, paying full price for everything, missing out on rewards, struggling to access capital when you need it. Or you can take the first step and start by getting the 9-digit number that every non-US citizen needs to tap into this American financial system. So I broke it down in this video over here, which you can click to watch the full breakdown on your first few steps when it comes to accessing the system, because the American credit system isn't going anywhere. And right now, this system is more accessible to non-US citizens than ever before. If you found value in today's video, click the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.